We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Vallotton. Welcome back to the BraveCo podcast. I am your host, Jason Vallotton. And this week, fellas, we're solo. It's me and you together. So I want to talk about winning the war within. You know, we all have a war that we're in. We are all born into a war. And I think oftentimes we don't understand and don't realize that we're in a war. And I know, like, man, before you turn this podcast off, because you're just like, golly, dude, I can't listen to this we're in a war talk at friggin' 8:30 in the morning. But it's gonna get hopeful here in a minute. I'm actually gonna give us keys to winning the war within us. But the first thing is, you know, we don't often think about it, but we are all born into a war. And at a very young age, most of you heard my story, but if you haven't, I just want to give it really fast. You know, at a really young age, I struggled with tons of anxiety that I didn't realize I had. And that anxiety led to me medicating with masturbation, again, like 10 years old, really young. And by the time I was 14, I was addicted to porn and masturbation. At 16, I met my high school sweetheart, was married at 18, had my first child by the time I was 19, and my third by the time I was 24. You know, I was divorced at 27. So, you know, raising kids as a single dad. And then at 29, I ended up in a nervous breakdown, which, man, I don't know if you guys have ever been in a place in your life where you feel like your life is on fire and you don't know how to put it out. Yeah, that's divorce and nervous breakdown. I just felt so incredibly powerless in those worlds, and ended up getting remarried at 31, spent 12 years relying upon medication to help me cope with anxiety, to help me regulate my nervous system. At 35 years old, my wife and I finally got pregnant after trying to have kids for 5 years. And on our 10-week checkup to see the baby, we found out that the baby had died. And gosh, man, it's just one of the most challenging things to go through, right? Of like trying for so long, having these promises, and then finally getting this thing that you are like so excited about, and then go into the doctor and to find out that it's been taken away from you before you really even had it. And it's just like life is so incredibly challenging. And the thing is if you don't know that you were born into a war, you do all kinds of things that set you up for failure. Like, for instance, run away. Like, run away from tough things. Want to make life harder? Run away. Turn and back down. Want to make life harder? Live in fear. Want to make life harder? Don't plan. You know, don't have a plan. But when you understand that you were born into a war, you also have to understand that you were created for war. It's true. We were designed to go into the darkest places of the world and to be light, right? And sometimes those dark places, we often think about, man, going into the darkest places like Africa. I'm going to go into Africa, or I'm going to go into the Philippines. And that stuff's true, but a dark place could also be in your friend's life or in your life, or could be in one of your kids' lives, right? Like, it doesn't have to be in this foreign country, in this foreign land. But the Bible says that we are salt and we are light, right? We are a preservative and we are a light on a hill. Like, we are meant to cast life and light and hope into the places where there is darkness, there's death, there's destruction. And see, the battle is scary. Everyday battles are really scary until you understand I was born for this. I'm not alone. I was designed to handle this pressure. Try this one out. I was fully equipped to win today. Ephesians 6, I'm just going to read this a little bit. It says, put on the full armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, and against rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Verse 13, therefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. Having your loins girt about you with truth, having on the breastplate of righteousness, having your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace, above all taking the shield of faith, where you will be able to quench the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints. It's not an easy thing to do to face fear. I mean, honestly, to wake up every single day and to continue to push forward, right? To face the challenges of the day, to equip yourself to go into dark places. Again, whether that's a friend's battling with, or whether it's something that you're dealing with. But when you start to understand that not only were you designed for this, you were born for this, and you're created like your Father, who is a warrior. He's the King of Kings. He's the Lord of Lords. He's the Alpha and Omega. He's the beginning and the end. He is a warrior. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah, right? Like we weren't created after this weak man. We were created after this man who came and rescued us, who came and gave his life for us. And we're just simply modeling our lives after him. So it makes a ton of sense, right? That like we're not born into this perfect place that's super easy, but it also makes a lot of sense too, that like, okay, if I was born into a war, then how the heck do I equip myself every day? And Ephesians gives us this like really incredible outline, right? It first says, listen, what you see with your eyes, that's not what you're actually battling. You don't battle flesh and blood. So a lot of us think that we're battling our own thoughts. You're not battling your own thoughts. A lot of us think that you're battling people. You're not battling people. You think you're battling someone's poor decisions. You're not battling people's poor decisions. You're battling principalities and powers, right? You're battling rulers of darkness. You're battling against spiritual wickedness in high places is what it says. And it goes, okay, listen, if you want to be able to battle against those things, it doesn't matter how much you can bench press, although I like physical fitness. It doesn't matter how fast you can run, although I like mobility. What matters is that you put on the full armor of God, right? That you actually gear yourself up for the life that you live, that you'll be able to withstand, right? It says like, hey, put on the full armor of God that you can withstand the life that you're living in. Otherwise, you're unequipped, because you're going to get to a place where you've stood and you don't want to stand any longer. And God's going, no, dude, stand. Perseverance is a fruit of the Spirit. And I love verse 14 or verse 15. Oh, 14. It says, stand therefore having your loins girt about you with truth, and having the breastplate of righteousness on you. So just think about that. Like I have truth and I have righteousness. And put on your feet the gospel of peace. But above all, take the shield of faith wherever you go, that you may be able to quench the fiery darts of the enemy. and put on the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And then, don't forget to pray all the time. So I love this visual picture, right? And a lot of us have been to children's church and you put on the full costume and stuff like that. And this stuff preaches really well. Like, it's easy to say from the front, but this is a roadmap for our everyday life. This is a roadmap into you being a warrior, into you winning the war that's in you, to navigating the call of God on your life. This is it. It's like, you got to get truth, and you got to live in truth, and you got to live in faith, and you got to live a righteous life, right? You can't live an unrighteous, wicked life, a selfish life. But it's like, hey, listen, part of how you win this war is by being righteous, being in right standing. And then, you need to live in peace. You need to actually do what Philippians 4 says, is rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Let your gentleness and kindness be evident to all the Lord's near. If you need anything, feel free to ask God. But then it goes on to say, Philippians 4 goes on to say, and the God of peace, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind. So like, when we rejoice in what God is doing and who he is, we start living inside of this peace, right? We get this peace, not our peace. We get his peace for our best attempt at peace. That there's no armor on your back. Do you notice that there's no armor on your back? Do you notice that you don't have anything protecting your back? 2 reasons. One is because God is your rear guard. He's got your back. 2, you were never meant to retreat. You were never meant to back down. You were never meant to back up. We were only designed to go forward, right? In the kingdom, it says that we go from glory to glory. Now, the challenge that we have just naturally, just by nature, and I'm friggin' throwing myself right in the middle of this conversation, is that when we get in hard times, my first reaction when I get in a hard time is eject. How the heck do I get out of this? Because I don't want to keep going forward. This isn't fun. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work to put on the armor of God is not an easy thing to do. It's a lot of work to withstand the fear and the temptation to just find a way to escape. Gosh, man, is massive. It's really massive. And I've dealt with that recently of different places in my life where I felt fear, finances, or like, man, I'm not making enough right now to make all the ends meet. And then this thing comes over me that's like, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to like pull everything together? And you feel all this pressure. And then what comes in is doubt, right? This doubt that says like, oh, you don't have what it takes, or it's going to be harder than what you can actually pull off, or man, I don't know that you're going to be able to figure this out. And there's different areas of life that happens. But we get into this place where it's really challenging to change the way that I'm looking at the battle. And I want to give us 3 keys to winning this war that we live in. But first, I love how much God teaches us through nature. I was looking at chickens, right, in nature. I was doing just a tiny bit of research about chickens, and chickens are really interesting. Nature's really interesting. But I was doing some research on eggs, and it was talking about when an egg is finally starting to hatch. There's this big debate, and the debate is over, do you help the chicken, right, this little chick that's trying to come out of the egg, do you help it out? Or do you leave it alone to struggle and work its way out? And ultimately, here's the, like, to make a very long story short, it can take up to 24 hours for a chicken, once he starts to try and get out of the egg, to finally get out of the egg. And that's a lot of friggin' struggle. If you sat there and, man, 3 or 4 hours, that chicken finally gets a little tiny hole in the egg, and then you come back 5 hours later and it's like barely any bigger, and you come back and that bird's just like suffering and trying to move around. We feel a lot of compassion. We get into this place where we're like, dude, let me just help this little thing out. Well, here's what happens if we do that is you actually rip that little baby chick off of the strength and endurance that it needs to live life. See, that struggle in its early younger years, that struggle of trying to get out of its egg is what produces the perseverance, the muscle that it's going to take to walk and to fly and to move and to be strong. And so all of us with compassionate hearts that are going over there and like just cracking this egg open and freeing this bird from this prison that it's in aren't doing it any favors. And the same thing is true for our life. When you look at it, like my son, when my son goes through really hard things, it's very rare that I go, man, I wish that I could, like, I'm going to take this burden off of him. I'm going to take this load off so that he doesn't have to feel it. It's really, really rare that I actually go like, I'm going to remove you from all of these challenges. And why? At some point, like I look at my son and I go like, wow, he's struggling, whatever. He's struggling at school. He has a hard time with his relationship with his teacher. Well, at some point, I can't go in there and solve that for him. I have to help him solve that. I have to teach him. I got to coach him. And he's got to be the one that shows up and learns how to have a real conversation with his teacher. Man, he's struggling with friends. It's like, okay, well, I can't just go and rescue him from that. I have to help him. And it's not that I abandon him, but at some point you realize like, man, if I rescue my kids from all the different struggles that are in their life, you guys remember that quote, right? Is that hard times make strong men make good times make weak men make hard times. And it goes back around. And when we rescue our kids from hard times, and I'm not talking hard like emotionally damaging or, physical debilitation. My son was about to get in a car accident, of course, right? Like I would step in, or if he's getting beat up, yeah, like I'm going to step in and do what I have to do. But at some point as a dad, I have to understand that the challenges of life, that struggle, are actually the thing that's shaping him to develop him into a man of character, into a righteous man, right? That has faith, whose faith has been tested, because otherwise you don't have any confidence in your relationship with God if it's never been tested. And yet when I get into that myself, all I want is to be out of it. All I want is God to rescue me from that. And I just know that God's like me, looking at my son going, nah, dude, this is good for you. This is where you need to be. And when I look at how God has created nature, you start to realize like, dude, look at how we came into this earth, right? You came into this earth being squeezed through your mom's pelvis, your head, like your bones being soft enough that your head could like deform so that you can like be squeezed out and you come out with like this scream. Like it's seriously traumatizing. It's like this traumatizing experience. We go through, your mom goes through all this pain and all this anguish and all this turmoil, and you go through like this really uncomfortable process. That's how we come into this world. Okay, this isn't going to be an easy cakewalk. So here's 3 keys to actually winning the war. I'm going to give them to you. The first one, how you see the battle determines the outcome. How you see the battle determines the outcome 100% of the time. I remember when I was young, I used to play soccer. I played soccer for 20 years and just loved it. I played indoor soccer after I was married, and man, it was just so much fun. But here's what happens every freaking time is, and I'm sure you guys have had this happen. It's like when the other team comes out to warm up, inevitably 13-year-olds have mustaches and they're 6'2". Like, how does that happen? How are the opponents always so much bigger and then they hit puberty at 13 years old? I mean, I felt like that always happened. And so I remember my dad constantly telling me, he'd get so upset at me because as soon as I'd see the other team, I'd be like, oh, there's no way we could beat them. And my dad would be like, son, you haven't even played and you've already lost. And he was right? Like, as soon as I matched myself up against them in my mind, the game was already over. And the truth is it's not like they had more skill. And it's not even that they were more courageous or faster or stronger. They were just taller. They looked meaner. But more importantly, in my eyes, I looked weak. In my eyes, I looked fragile. In my eyes, I looked incapable. It's kind of like when the Israelites spent 40 years wandering the wilderness. They come into the promised land. They send 12 spies across the Jordan. They go to the other side. They come back and they give a report. 10 of the 12 say this: there's giants in the land, and we were like grasshoppers in their eyes. Well, how do you know that you were like grasshoppers in their eyes? Did you actually go up and talk to the giants? Did you say, hey, how do I look to you? And the giants look at you and say like, oh man, you're just this little tiny. No, they assumed, right? They went and they saw the giants and they went, we're small. We can't beat these guys. There's no way that we can win. And on the other side, you have Joshua and Caleb who have come back. And what did they see? They had in their hands fruit. They said, this is our promised land. This is what we were designed to do. How did they see the battle? They didn't even see the giants as a problem. What they saw is they saw promise. They saw the promise of God in the battle. Excuse me while I take a drink of water. But often we get into these places in our life, right? Could be your relationship with your wife, where all of a sudden you just don't feel like you have what it takes. You're determined that, your marriage is always going to be tough. It's always going to struggle. There's no way out. And it's like, okay, well, when you put on that mindset, when you look at your circumstance through fear, through doubt, what other outcome is there besides a negative outcome? But when you start to look at your circumstance, you look at the battle, the war that you're in through the eyes of God, connected to God, you realize, oh, I'm set up for victory. You see this in Gideon. Do you guys remember the story of Gideon when Gideon was the youngest man of his clan, right? And God chose him. They were hiding from the Amalekites and Amorites. They were hiding from them because they were the Amalekites would come through and just freaking wreck them. They would just like steal their crops and trash the Israelites. And so Gideon's frustrated one day. He's like, where's the God that my forefathers talked about? Where are the miracles? And basically, to make a really long story short, an angel comes to Gideon and says, hey, dude, I want you to rescue your people. I want you to free your people. And he's like, bro, you got the wrong guy. I'm the smallest guy from the smallest clan. Like you got the wrong guy. And the angel says, nah, bro, you're it. So anyways, Gideon buys into it. And what happens is they get to a point where Gideon rallies all of the men in the area. And he's got a ton of men. He's got like 30,000 guys. Well, it wasn't a ton of men compared to the enemy. It says that there were so many enemy. It was like grains of sand on the seashore. There were just like so many enemy. And God looks at Gideon and says, hey, you got too many guys. You got too many of them. Why don't you tell every guy that's afraid that he can go home? Could you imagine, think about it in real terms. God comes to your house and says, hey, listen, you're going to go fight whatever, Al-Qaeda or the Russians or whoever, it doesn't even matter. And there's like hundreds of thousands of them. You got 30,000. And he goes, oh, by the way, you have too many people. Why didn't you tell all the ones who are afraid to leave? Well, it whittles them down significantly. And then God says, nah, Gideon, you still have too many. You need to sort them out again. And God sorts Gideon down to 300 guys. And he says something to Gideon. He says, the night before the battle, Gideon, God says to Gideon, hey, if you're afraid, why don't you go into the enemy's camp and see what they're saying about you? So Gideon goes over to the enemy's camp, sneaks over there, and he listens to him. And he listens to one man share a dream that he had about basically Gideon's army completely annihilating them. And Gideon went back the next day. Then God gives Gideon a strategy. He says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take torches and I want you to take jars. And when I say, I want you to remove the jars from the torches and smash the torches and basically yell, like, give up a warrior cry. And that's what he does. And he completely wipes out, annihilates his enemy. Now, what did God have to address in Gideon? The way that he saw himself and the way that he saw that battle going. He continually reminded Gideon, it's not about you, bro. This is not about how you see you. This is all about me. You're just my son fulfilling, walking out the path that I've created to free my people. You're just my mouthpiece. You're just my partner. And if you're afraid, like, go check out what they're saying. So many of us lose the war within us because we don't have any confidence. We're doubting our ability. And the truth is, like, we have to look at what God's doing in us. We have to get the truth. We have to not get the truth about us. We have to get the truth about him. We have to get a testimony. Paul says this to Timothy. He's like, hey, use the words spoken over you. Use prophecies that have been spoken over you to fight the good fight in your life. Don't get bogged down in facts about who you think that you are. It's actually lies about, the enemy or how you're going to get pummeled. Get God's eyes. Okay, number two, don't back down from the battle. One of the easiest ways to lose the whole entire thing is to back out too soon, is to quit. And James 1 says, I'm just going to paraphrase it, says, consider it pure joy or hilarious laughter when you fall into unexpected trials, for the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And when perseverance runs its course, you will lack nothing. Okay, so here's the question that you have to answer today. Do you want to be led to a place where you don't lack anything? Well, that's easy. Yeah, of course. Like, who doesn't want to lack? I don't want to lack stuff. And God goes, okay, well, here's the plan. Here's my great plan, Jay, for you to have the most abundant life possible. Persevere through hard times. But the only way that you're really going to persevere is if you put on joy, if you find joy. Because so often, right on the other side of our pain is this victory. My dad says it like this. He says, the worst pain to be in is pain without vision, because vision gives pain a purpose. And if you can start to look at your life and go, why am I in all this pain? And what's God going to do out of this pain? God, what are you going to do with all this pain in my life? Not only how are you going to get rid of it, but what are you going to do in me, through me? What's the purpose inside of this pain? Like, would you wake up at 5:45 every morning and go work out every day if you didn't think it was going to make your life any better? No. If you didn't think that you're going to get any stronger? No. Because who wants to inconvenience their life? But it's because we want to be physically stronger and mentally stronger and spiritually stronger and emotionally stronger, that we will sacrifice today and go through a bunch of pain today with joy, right? When I go to the gym, I'm like this morning, I went to the gym. I didn't get to sleep till 12 o'clock last night because my son has an ear infection and he was just up for a long time. And when I went to bed, I had already determined it doesn't matter what time I go to sleep tonight, I'm going to work out. I'm not going to make an excuse because, again, like, I'm just as tempted as anybody to make excuses. But I realized, like, these excuses are not bringing me to a place where I'm really satisfied in my decisions. It's not bringing me to a place of strength. When I choose to sleep in and don't get out of bed at 5:45 because I didn't get to sleep till 12, like, I'm not doing myself a favor. And I understand you can't live your whole life like that, right? Like, sleep's really important. I understand that. But on the other hand, like, so is sacrifice. No, so is enjoying persevering. And that's the key, right? Because if we back down when it gets hard, well, how are you ever going to get to a place where you really get anything worth that's really satisfactory? Because anything satisfactory in this life was hard to accomplish. A good marriage. A good marriage doesn't happen by accident. A good relationship with a friend. A good relationship with a friend requires a lot of intentionality, a lot of sacrifice. Good relationship with your kids. Man, I've got 5 kids. It's work. There's a lot of joy in it, but there's a lot of work in it. Being a good employee, there's a lot of hard stuff that you have to go through every day to be a really good employee and to get the benefit of being a good employee, right? Like, if you back down when things get tough, that becomes the cap on your life. That becomes your ceiling, is the how much you can endure. Like, that decides the ceiling on your life. So guys, don't back down when you get into this war. Change your perspective. Like James 1, that should be a life verse for all of us, is consider it pure joy. Call a friend and say, hey, I'm in one of the hardest times of my life. Like, something good's happening. I'm not backing down. I'm not going to get down on myself. I'm not going to contemplate how bad this is going to go. I'm actually going to do the opposite. I'm going to go, God's going to come through for me. This is going to, on the other side of this, I'm going to be strong. I'm going to work this out with God. All right. Last one. Number 3. The quickest way to lose a war is to fight one that you are not equipped for. I'm just going to let you think about that for 2 seconds while I take a drink. The quickest way to lose a war is to fight one that you're not equipped for. We often put ourselves in unnecessary battles. And we do that unknowingly a lot of times. But sometimes, you put yourself straight into a war when you look at somebody else's life with envy and you try to get something that they have from a place of envy. It's like Instagram, and we've talked about it so much that I even hate bringing it up, but it's true. When somebody else is in a fruitful season and when you're in a root growing season, like, it's easy to look at other people's lives and at their best day, right? Like, I'm looking at their best day and I'm going like, gosh, why don't I have that? Why am I not that successful? Why is that not happening in my life? And I begin to burden myself with trying to be something that I don't have the grace for. And it's like, well, dude, you just put yourself into a battle. It may not be the battle for your life, but it is a battle, right? And that's a problem with comparison. When you compare yourself to somebody else, you're looking through the eyes of judgment. You're not looking through the eyes of grace. You're saying, man, I wish that you were that. I wish that you were in this season. I just want to be in a fruitful season. It's like, well, yeah, don't all of us just want to be in a fruitful season? You're not always in a fruit bearing season. Sometimes you're in a root bearing season. Your roots are going deep. You're growing depth. You're not necessarily growing fruit. And the fruit comes later. But I see it happen a lot in our lives is we take on stuff that we were never supposed to take on. And this is where I love Jesus's model, right? Is it says Jesus only did what he saw the Father doing. Man, there was a lot of opinions around what he should have been doing. Could you imagine being the Son of God, Jesus Christ, walking around and you had the power to heal anybody? You had the power to create wealth. You had the power to influence. And how much pressure there would be to perform for everyone. And Jesus continually pushed through crowds without healing everybody, avoiding towns, literally setting limits and just going like, no, that is not what I'm supposed to be doing right now. No, this is not what I'm only supposed to do this thing. I'm so focused on this. And there were a couple exceptions in his life, but he stayed focused on the goal, focused on the target. And because he did that, he had the strength to endure the challenges that were specifically created for him. And the same is true for us, right? Like this day has enough challenges in and of itself. Don't go find more. Don't go compare yourself to somebody else and out of your insecurity, go and try and do a whole bunch of things. Or don't go create a bunch of drama over here that you're just going to have to go solve. Like, can we stay in our lane and can we focus on what God has called us to do? And I love it too when you look at the story of David. David's a shepherd. And being a shepherd back in the day was not this glamorous job, right? It wasn't like the high guy on the totem pole gets to be the shepherd out with the sheep. It was a crappy job, a sucky job. You're out there in the cold and long hours, and no one to talk to, is lonely. Not a prestigious job, stinky. But David looked at that and went, okay, this right here, this is my battlefield. And so when a lion came to steal one of his sheep, he went, not on my watch. And when a bear came, David confronted that bear and he took it on. And by doing those small things, right, those small victories, he gained the confidence to face Goliath. And Goliath led to a promotion for him to eventually become king. You understand that David didn't just start off and go, even though he was anointed king at a young age, he didn't just go, okay, now give me the kingdom. Well, he wasn't equipped for that. David wasn't equipped, even though he was anointed for the king to rule, he wasn't necessarily equipped to be king. And so God took him through this process of learning how to steward the sheep, of learning how to confront small enemies, and then larger enemies with Goliath. And then eventually created, gave him this skill set, this tool set to be king and lead people. When we stay in our lane, man, there's nothing that we can't do, Like when we stay in our lane, we're like Daniel. Like through prayer, through good character, we influence 4 kings. We outlive 4 kings. When we stay in our lane, right, we're like Gideon. Not the biggest man, not the toughest man, but God can use that, right? When we stay in our lane, you end up being like Nehemiah and rebuilding stuff that hasn't been rebuilt for 400 years. When we stay in our lane and fight the battles that God's created for us to fight, we end up fully equipped for what God's called us to. I want to encourage you guys today, if you're in a war, if you're in a battle, if you're struggling, one, to know that you're not alone. Every single man has gone through this, is in it, or is going to go in it. And in so many different areas of life. Could be mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. It could be a real circumstance. You know, you're like, wow, I really am at war. Great. Well, you're not alone. And the goal is to change the way that you see that. Change the way you see yourself and stay in your lane. And recognize that God has equipped you for this day. And so you have to equip yourself. And part of how we persevere, so I'm going to close with this. Part of how we persevere is by staying in that Ephesians 6, right? To put on the full armor of God. To remember that you're not fighting against flesh and blood. To speak truth into your life. To live a righteous life. To be a man of peace. To put on the shield of faith, right? Put on your helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, right? Like, equip yourself to win today. That's what I want us to do, is to dive back in and equip yourself for the season that you're in. I'm going to pray for you. Father, thank you for each and every man that's listening to this, and for the ladies, Lord. And God, I thank you that whatever we're facing today, you're not afraid of. You don't have one bit of concern. You're not going, oh my gosh, how are they going to survive? Or you have created, you've given us the ability to weather these storms or to create perseverance. And God, I ask that you would give us the faith, Lord, that you would bring encouragement. God, that you would give us the strength to endure, to go further, Father, so that we could bring you glory, Lord, so that we could rescue the helpless, Lord, so that we could bring hope to the hopeless. We could be light in the darkness, Father. And God, I just release hope and peace over every person that's listening to this today. Lord, that their circumstances would even when their circumstances don't shift, God, that the atmosphere around them, Lord, where there was depression, that there would be life and hope. God, where there's anxiety, that there would be peace. Lord, where there was dread, that there would be hope and relief, God. In Jesus' name, amen. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Stay brave. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the BraveCo podcast. If you like this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, leave us a great comment. And if you like this episode in particular, share it with your friends and family. That helps us to spread the word. Guys, stay brave. We'll see you next week.